He loved her for 5 years but never proposed. 5 years later, on his birthday, he found her on his bed, wearing nothing but a fiery smile. "Hi, my very beautiful, most cherished and loyal family. Welcome back to your own family channel, Mr. Peter Stories." Before we begin, let's take a moment to pause, breathe, and connect with something greater than ourselves. This prayer is for you, my beautiful family, especially for the incredible women who have walked through life's storms with grace and strength. Close your eyes, open your heart, and let these words embrace you. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with hearts full of gratitude. Lord, I lift up every woman listening to this prayer, every mother, sister, wife, and daughter who has carried burdens in silence, who has given love without asking for anything in return, who has stood strong even when life tried to break her. Father, bless them. Heal their hearts from pain, fill their souls with peace, and remind them that they are never alone. Let them know that their kindness, their love, and their sacrifices are seen, valued, and deeply cherished. May you renew their strength like the morning sun. May you pour joy into their spirits like gentle rain. And may you open doors of blessings they never expected. Lord, may this channel be more than just stories. May it be a place of comfort, warmth, and love. May every woman listening right now feel uplifted, cherished, and wrapped in your divine grace. And may we continue to grow together as one family, supporting and inspiring one another. Amen. My family, I hope you feel that blessing deep in your heart. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are powerful. And don't forget our challenge. This channel is ours. Together we will beat YouTube. So let's do this. Every beautiful soul watching, like, comment, and share this video. Let's complete our 20,000 subscribers challenge before the 31st. And now, James will start the story.
Please don't leave the video. Many have left when I start reading, but I promise to satisfy you. I love you just as much as Mr. Peter does. Chapter 1. Silent Admirer. The moment Serafina Niel walked into Valerian Industries for her interview, something shifted in Lucian Vale's carefully ordered world. She wore a tailored navy suit that stood out against her warm brown skin, her curls framing a face that radiated both intelligence and warmth. But it wasn't her striking beauty that captured Lucian's attention. It was her eyes, bright with determination and dreams larger than the skyscraper they stood in. "I believe in building things that last," she had said when asked why she wanted to join his company. "Not just structures of steel and glass, but legacies that transform lives." Lucian, who had built his empire from nothing, felt those words resonate in chambers of his heart he didn't know existed. When their hands met in a professional handshake, he felt an unfamiliar current pass through him. Later that evening, as he signed her hiring paperwork, he dismissed the tremor in his hand as fatigue. 5 years had passed since that day. 5 years of Lucian watching Serafina rise through the ranks of his company on merit alone. 5 years of collecting fragments of her existence. The way she hummed softly while reviewing quarterly reports, how she always brought homemade banana bread for the custodial staff on Fridays, the determined set of her shoulders when facing challenges. In the boardroom, Lucian maintained his reputation as a man of few words, but his silence concealed tsunamis of unspoken emotions whenever Serafina presented her innovative ideas. Her presentations were always impeccable, data-driven yet infused with the human element other executives often overlooked. "The Henderson proposal isn't just about profit margins," she had argued during a recent meeting, her voice passionate yet controlled. "It's about creating sustainable housing that transforms communities." While others saw numbers, she saw people. While they calculated returns, she envisioned futures. And every time she spoke, Lucian fell deeper into a love he couldn't express. "Mr. Vale?" Serafina's voice cut through his thoughts one rainy Tuesday afternoon. She stood at his office door, portfolio in hand, unwittingly magnificent in a simple emerald dress that matched the color of her eyes. Ms. Niel, he acknowledged, his deep voice betraying nothing of his accelerating heartbeat. Please come in. She presented her proposal with characteristic brilliance, unaware that Lucian was fighting a battle between professional composure and personal longing. When their fingers accidentally brushed as she handed him a document, he withdrew his hand perhaps too quickly. If she noticed, she gave no sign. That evening, as most employees departed, Lucian observed from his office window as Serafina lingered at the front desk, engaged in animated conversation with Jordan, the security guard whose daughter was battling leukemia. From his vantage point, he could see her press something into the man's hand, an envelope, likely containing financial assistance she thought no one knew about. Lucian smiled faintly. Her generosity was another facet of her character he treasured. In a world where most people broadcasted their charitable gestures for recognition, Serafina helped others with quiet dignity. The following day, Serafina found herself assigned to lead the prestigious Westbrook development, a project many senior executives had vied for. She assumed it was her detailed proposal that had won the board's approval. She never suspected that Lucian had championed her behind closed doors, fighting against the subtle prejudice of board members who questioned whether a young black woman was ready for such responsibility. She's not just ready, Lucian had stated with rare forcefulness. She's the only one truly qualified. When discrimination arose from a racist client who refused to work with Serafina, Lucian intervened without fanfare. He didn't tell her how he had threatened to withdraw his company's support entirely unless she received proper respect. She only knew that suddenly the client became remarkably cooperative. At company gatherings, Lucian maintained a calculated distance. Too close and he feared his feelings would become transparent. Too distant and he might miss the musical sound of her laughter. So he existed in the periphery of her world, watching her shine while he remained in shadows. You should talk to her, Marcus, his childhood friend and CFO, suggested during the annual charity gala. Beyond quarterly reviews and project assessments, Lucian swirled his untouched champagne. And say what, exactly? Anything. The weather, politics, the mysterious way the office coffee disappears faster when she works late. Marcus grinned. Just words, Lucian. They're not as difficult as you make them out to be. But for Lucian, words were precisely the problem. The man who could negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat became tongue-tied contemplating simple conversation with Serafina. Each morning, he resolved to invite her to lunch. Each evening, he left with the invitation unspoken. Instead, he expressed his feelings through actions she never connected to him. When her computer mysteriously upgraded after she mentioned slow processing speeds to a colleague, she attributed it to efficient IT services. When her parking spot was relocated to a safer area after a minor incident in the garage, she assumed it was standard security protocol. When her sister received a prestigious art scholarship she hadn't applied for, Serafina never suspected the wealthy benefactor was her own employer. One evening, working late, Lucian passed by her office. She sat bathed in the glow of her computer screen, brow furrowed in concentration, a strand of hair falling across her cheek. The urge to brush it away nearly overwhelmed him. "Is there something you need, Mr. Vale?" she asked, looking up suddenly. Caught in unexpected eye contact, Lucian hesitated. 1,000 confessions rose to his lips. "I need your smile to start my day. I need your voice to calm my thoughts. I need your courage to inspire my own." "Just checking if you needed anything before I leave," he said instead, his voice steadier than his heart. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied with a professional smile. As he walked away, Lucian acknowledged the irony. The man who owned half the city couldn't claim what he truly wanted, not through money, not through power. For the first time in his life, Lucian Vale was utterly helpless against the quiet tyranny of his own unspoken love. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the glittering city, Lucian stood at the window and whispered her name to the empty room. Someday, he promised himself, someday he would find the words to tell her everything. Until then, he would love her silently, completely, from a distance she couldn't begin to measure. Chapter 2. Broken Down Walls. The autumn night descended earlier than Serafina expected as she finished reviewing the Henderson proposal. When she finally emerged from Valerian Tower, the parking lot had emptied except for her weathered Honda and a sleek black Aston Martin she recognized as Lucian's. The contrast between their vehicles never failed to remind her of the vast difference in their worlds. Just another late night, she murmured to herself, slipping into her car, running her fingers over the cracked leather of the steering wheel. A relic from college she couldn't bear to replace despite her rising position. When the engine responded with nothing but a labored whine, Serafina's heart sank. "No, no, not tonight," she pleaded, turning the key repeatedly. After the fifth attempt, she slammed her palm against the steering wheel, frustration overwhelming her usually composed demeanor. The presentations for tomorrow weren't finished. Her sister Zora needed help with college applications, and now this. Stepping out into the cool evening air, Serafina tried calling 3 different mechanics. Each promised to come tomorrow. Leaning against the car's hood, she closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her like high tide. The nearest bus stop was a mile away, and rideshare prices were surging. "Just breathe," she reminded herself. "You've faced worse." The purr of a powerful engine interrupted her moment of self-encouragement. Through the darkness, headlights approached slowly before stopping beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Lucian Vale's chiseled profile illuminated by the soft glow of his dashboard. "Car trouble?" he asked, his voice lower and somehow warmer than it ever sounded in the office. Serafina straightened immediately, smoothing her skirt in an unconscious gesture. "Mr. Vale, yes, it seems to have given up the ghost." "Lucian," he corrected, and for a moment Serafina thought she detected nervousness beneath his usual reserve. "Outside office hours, I prefer Lucian." The name felt intimate on her tongue when she tested it. Lucian. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with something neither acknowledged. "Can I offer you a ride home?" he finally asked. Serafina hesitated. In 5 years, they'd never been alone outside the professional setting of Valerian Industries. The prospect stirred an unexpected flutter in her stomach. "I wouldn't want to inconvenience you," she replied, even as the first drops of rain began to fall. Lucian smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his usually stoic features. "It's hardly an inconvenience to help a colleague in need." Colleague. The word hung between them, accurate yet somehow insufficient. As the rain intensified, practicality overcame hesitation. Serafina grabbed her bag from her dead car and slipped into Lucian's passenger seat, enveloped immediately by the scent of leather and subtle cologne. The interior was luxurious but understated, much like the man himself. "Where to?" he asked, his fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel. She gave him her address in Willow Heights, a respectable neighborhood, but certainly not where most executives lived. If Lucian had any thoughts about her modest address, he revealed nothing. The first few minutes passed in silence, the rain creating a hypnotic pattern on the windshield. Serafina watched Lucian's profile surreptitiously, noticing details she'd never had the opportunity to observe closely. The slight crease between his brows, the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Do you always work this late?" she asked, surprising herself by breaking the silence first. "Often," he replied. Then, after a pause, "Though I suspect for different reasons than you." "Oh? And what would my reasons be?" His lips curved slightly. "Based on observation, perfectionism, dedication. Perhaps a touch of proving yourself in a world that doesn't always make space for people who look like you. The accuracy of his assessment startled her. You've been watching me. Lucian's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. I notice all my employees. And yours? She pressed, ignoring the strange disappointment his explanation evoked. Your reasons for the late nights. He was silent so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. Silence, he said simply. Big empty houses are sometimes harder to bear than staying where there's purpose. The vulnerability in those few words shifted something between them. Serafina studied him with new eyes, not as the untouchable CEO, but as a man who might know loneliness as intimately as she knew ambition. I would have thought you'd fill your evenings with, she gestured vaguely, whatever millionaires do, yacht parties, dating supermodels. A genuine laugh escaped him, warm, rich, and startlingly beautiful. I hate boats. They make me seasick. And the supermodels? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. His eyes met hers briefly, something unreadable in their depths. I prefer substance over spectacle. The car stopped at a red light, rain drumming against the roof. In that suspended moment, they were just two people sharing confidences in the intimate cocoon of darkness and falling water. You grew up in Foster Creek, didn't you? He asked as the light turned green. Serafina's eyebrows rose. How did you know that? Your application. 5 years ago. At her skeptical look, he added, I have a good memory. For everyone's hometown. For things that matter. Before she could decipher that statement, he continued, I grew up not far from there. Riverdale District. Serafina couldn't hide her surprise. Riverdale was known for its poverty and neglect, a stark contrast to the man who now commanded one of the city's largest corporations. You don't seem surprised, he noted, that you rose from there or that you're admitting it. Both, perhaps. Serafina considered him. Success stories aren't unusual from where I come from, Mr. V. Lucian. We're taught resilience from the cradle. And in Riverdale, we're taught survival, he countered, navigating through streets that grew more familiar as they approached her neighborhood. Different lesson, similar outcome. As they talked, something remarkable happened. The careful walls both had maintained in their professional interactions began to crumble. She told him about her sister Zora's artistic talent, her mother's struggle with lupus, her father's death that had thrust responsibility onto her young shoulders. He shared fragments of his childhood, an abusive father, a mother who worked 3 jobs, finding refuge in public libraries where he devoured books on architecture and finance. Is that where it began? Your passion for building? She asked as they turned onto her street. Perhaps, he acknowledged, though I think I always understood that some structures are meant to shelter, while others are designed to inspire. I wanted to create both. When they pulled up to her modest townhouse, Serafina found herself reluctant to end their conversation. For the first time, she'd glimpsed the man behind the empire, and he was more complex and compelling than she had imagined. Thank you for the ride, she said, gathering her belongings, and the conversation. The pleasure was mine, he replied, and the sincerity in his voice made her pause. An impulse seized her. Would you like to come in for coffee? It's the least I can offer after you rescued me. The invitation hung between them, laden with unintended implications neither was ready to acknowledge. Lucian's expression shifted, desire and restraint battling visibly before composure reclaimed his features. Another time, perhaps, he said gently. You have presentations to finish, and I've already kept you longer than intended. Serafina nodded, ignoring an inexplicable pang of disappointment. How did you know about the presentations? You mentioned them in yesterday's meeting, he replied with a small smile. Good night, Serafina. As she watched his car disappear into the rain-soaked night, Serafina realized two significant things. Lucian Vale had noticed far more about her than she had ever suspected, and for the first time in 5 years, he had called her by her first name, the sound of it in his deep voice lingering like a caress long after he was gone. Inside her home, she found herself wondering why he had happened to be leaving at exactly the right moment to rescue her. The thought followed her into dreams where his eyes held secrets she couldn't quite decipher. Chapter 3. Dancing with Destiny. The annual Valerian Industries Charity Gala transformed the Grand Meridian Hotel into a wonderland of crystal chandeliers and white orchids. Serafina stood at the periphery of the ballroom, a vision in midnight blue satin that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor. She'd spent a month's savings on the dress, an extravagance she justified as a professional investment. "You look like you're plotting an escape route," teased Amara, her colleague from marketing, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. Serafina accepted the drink with a grateful smile. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows you." Amara clinked her glass against Serafina's. The mighty Serafina Niele, fearless in boardrooms but uncomfortable at parties. Who would have thought? Serafina's gaze drifted across the room where executives mingled with investors, their easy laughter speaking of lifelong privilege. Despite her professional success, these events always reminded her of the invisible barriers that remained. "I belong in the boardroom," she murmured. "Here, I feel like an imposter." "Nonsense," Amara scoffed. "You're the most brilliant person in this room, including him." She nodded toward Lucian, who stood conversing with the mayor, commanding attention without effort in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Serafina found her eyes lingering on him longer than intended. Since their rain-soaked drive 2 weeks ago, something had shifted between them at work. Subtle glances held a moment longer, professional conversations tinged with newfound awareness. She'd caught herself wondering about the man behind the power, remembering his unexpected confession about empty houses and seasickness on boats. "Speaking of our illustrious CEO," Amara whispered, "he's been watching you all evening." "Don't be ridiculous," Serafina dismissed, though her heart quickened. "I'm serious. Every time you're not looking, his eyes find you." Before Serafina could respond, the orchestra began playing a waltz. Couples drifted to the center of the ballroom, forming a swirling tapestry of movement and color. "Ms. Niel!" The deep voice behind her sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. She turned to find Lucian standing there, his dark eyes intense. Up close, she noticed details missed from afar, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the slight curl of his hair at his collar. "Mr. Vale," she acknowledged, suddenly aware of Amara slipping discreetly away. "Would you care to dance?" he asked, extending his hand. The simple question hung between them, weighted with unspoken significance. Serafina hesitated, surprised by the invitation and her own visceral reaction to it. "I'm not sure I belong out there," she admitted, gesturing toward the dance floor where the city's elite moved with practiced grace. Lucian's expression softened. "Then neither do I." Before taking her hand, he added, "By the way, I reviewed your Henderson proposal today." "And?" Her pulse quickened. The mixed-income development project was her most ambitious yet. Affordable housing integrated with market-rate units, a community center focused on arts education, green spaces designed with input from neighborhood residents, and local businesses receiving subsidized commercial space. It was the kind of transformative urban development she dreamed of creating since college. "It's brilliant," he said simply, "especially the tiered financing structure and the community ownership component. It's exactly the kind of visionary thinking Valerian needs." Relief and pride flooded through her. The board still needs to approve it. "They will." There was such conviction in his voice that she almost believed him, Despite knowing how conservative some board members could be about innovative financing models, the unexpected solidarity in his words touched something deep within her. She placed her hand in his, hyper-aware of the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his fingers as they closed around her own. He led her to the center of the ballroom, and as his arm encircled her waist, Serafina felt the weight of countless eyes upon them. The powerful CEO and the rising executive, the billionaire and the woman from Foster Creek. An unlikely pair by any measure. "Everyone's watching," she whispered as they began to move. "Let them," he replied, his voice low and meant only for her. "I only see you." The simple declaration stole her breath. They moved together with surprising synchronicity, as if they'd danced 100 times before. His lead was confident but gentle, guiding rather than commanding. Serafina, who had taught herself to waltz via YouTube videos the night before, found her body responding instinctively to his. "You dance beautifully," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "You sound surprised." "Impressed," he corrected. "Though not surprised, you excel at everything you attempt." The compliment, delivered with such conviction, caused warmth to bloom in her chest. "You watch me that closely." Something flickered in his eyes, vulnerability quickly masked. It's difficult not to notice excellence. As they turned, Serafina caught glimpses of surprised faces, colleagues who had never seen their reserved CEO so engaged, so present. For this moment, the careful distance Lucian maintained with everyone had vanished. "Why me?" she asked suddenly, the question escaping before she could reconsider. His steps faltered almost imperceptibly before he recovered. "Why you? What? Why ask me to dance? There are countless women here who would be honored." The music swelled around them as Lucian drew her incrementally closer. The subtle scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something uniquely him, enveloped her senses. "Perhaps I wanted to dance with someone who sees me as a man, not a balance sheet," he said finally. "Someone who wouldn't be dancing with me if I were still the boy from Riverdale." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, the ballroom faded away, leaving only the two of them suspended in their own private universe. "How do you know I see you that way?" she asked softly. His eyes held hers, searching. "The way you look at me when you think I don't notice. Not with ambition or calculation, but with curiosity, as if I'm a puzzle you're trying to solve." Serafina's breath caught. She hadn't realized her interest had been so transparent. "And have you solved me yet?" he asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The question hung between them, laden with meanings neither was ready to acknowledge. Before she could formulate a response, the music ended. Lucian released her waist but kept her hand in his, brushing his lips across her knuckles in a gesture both old-fashioned and disarmingly intimate. "Thank you for the dance, Serafina," he said, her name a caress on his lips. As he stepped away, the spell broke. The ballroom rushed back into focus, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the evaluating glances. Serafina stood momentarily frozen, the ghost of his touch lingering on her skin. Amara appeared at her side, eyes wide. "What just happened?" "We danced," Serafina replied simply, though she knew it had been anything but simple. "Sarah, the man hasn't danced with anyone at these events in years. Not since..." Amara trailed off. "Since what?" Her friend hesitated. "Since his fiancée died, 6 years ago." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Serafina's eyes sought Lucian across the room, finding him engaged in conversation with board members, his professional mask firmly back in place. Yet she had glimpsed what lay beneath: loneliness, vulnerability, and something that had sparked to life in his eyes when they danced. For the remainder of the evening, they did not speak again. But their eyes met across the room more than once, each glance carrying the weight of unspoken questions and possibilities neither had previously considered. Later that night, as Serafina removed her earrings before her bedroom mirror, she found herself replaying the dance in her mind. The strength of his hand at her waist, the intensity in his eyes, the way the world had narrowed to just the two of them. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder if there could be more between them than professional respect. Across the city, in his penthouse overlooking the glittering skyline, Lucian Vale stood at his window, a tumbler of whiskey untouched in his hand. He had broken his own rule tonight, crossing a line he had carefully maintained for 5 years. Dancing with Serafina had been impulsive, reckless even, and yet, as he recalled the feel of her in his arms, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. In those few minutes, he had felt more alive than he had in years. The irony wasn't lost on him that he, who commanded an empire, felt powerless in the face of his feelings for a woman who had no idea how completely she had claimed his heart. Chapter 4: Storm and Shelter. 3 weeks after the gala, the city was besieged by the worst storm in a decade. Rain lashed against the windows of Valerian Tower, and thunder rumbled like distant artillery. Most employees had left early, heeding weather advisories, but Serafina remained, engrossed in finalizing the Henderson project presentation. "Ms. Niel." The familiar voice startled her from concentration. Lucian stood in her doorway, his usual impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. "You're still here?" It wasn't a question, but a statement tinged with concern. Since their dance, they had maintained professional cordiality, but the undercurrent of awareness between them remained, electric and unacknowledged. "Just finishing up," she replied, gesturing to her computer. "The Henderson presentation can wait until tomorrow," he interjected firmly. "The storm's worsening. They're closing sections of the parkway due to flooding." Serafina glanced at the window, surprised to see darkness had fallen. She'd been so absorbed in work that hours had passed unnoticed. "I didn't realize it was so late. Your car's still being repaired." She nodded, surprised he remembered. "The mechanic says another week. How were you planning to get home?" "Bus," she admitted. "The stop is just outside." Something flashed in his eyes. Determination, perhaps. "I have an emergency board meeting in 5 minutes. Wait for me afterward and I'll drive you home." Before she could protest, he added, "That's not a request, Serafina. This storm is dangerous." The use of her first name sent a now familiar warmth through her chest. "I don't want to inconvenience you." "Your safety isn't an inconvenience." His tone brooked no argument. 40 minutes. My office." With that, he was gone, leaving Serafina to wonder when exactly Lucian Vale had begun to care so much about her well-being. 45 minutes later, she stood at his office door, watching him end a call with sharp efficiency. He looked up, tension visibly leaving his shoulders at the sight of her. "Ready?" he asked, rising and gathering his coat. Together they descended to the underground garage, a charged silence between them. As they approached his car, Lucian's phone rang. The conversation was brief, but his expression darkened as he listened. "The 15th Street Bridge is underwater," he explained, opening her door. "We'll need to take the northern route." The rain was apocalyptic as they pulled onto the street, visibility reduced to mere yards. Lucian drove with focused precision, his hands steady on the wheel. 20 minutes into their journey, they encountered a roadblock. "Eastern Parkway is closed," a police officer informed them through the window. "Flash flooding. You'll need to detour through Riverside." Lucian's jaw tightened. "That's miles out of the way." "Sorry, sir. No exceptions." As they turned around, the windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. "This is getting worse," Lucian muttered. "We might need to find somewhere to wait it out." Lightning split the sky, illuminating Serafina's concerned profile. "There's a cafe about half a mile ahead," she suggested. "Riverstone. It's small but open late." He navigated carefully through streets rapidly becoming shallow canals. When they finally reached Riverstone Cafe, both were relieved to see warm light glowing from its windows. "Not exactly where I expected to spend my evening," Lucian remarked as they dashed through the rain to the entrance. The cafe was nearly empty, just the barista and an elderly couple in the corner. The warm, coffee-scented air enveloped them as they entered, dripping onto the wooden floor. "Welcome to Storm Refugee Central," the barista called cheerfully. "What can I get you?" They settled at a small table by the window with steaming mugs, black coffee for him, chai latte for her. Outside, the storm raged unabated, but within the cafe's walls, a strange sense of sanctuary prevailed. "You were in an important meeting," Serafina said finally. "You didn't have to leave." Lucian's eyes met hers over the rim of his mug. "The board can manage without me for one night, but I could have taken a rideshare. In this weather." He shook his head. The risk wasn't worth it. Something in his tone made her heart flutter. "And what exactly would that risk be, Mr. Vale?" His gaze intensified. "Lucian," he corrected softly. "And the risk would be—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Losing someone irreplaceable." The implication hung between them, fragile and significant. Before she could respond, another crack of lightning illuminated the sky, followed immediately by thunder that rattled the windows. The cafe lights flickered once, twice, then went out. "Looks like we lost power," the barista announced unnecessarily, already lighting candles. "Don't worry, folks. We've got a generator for the essentials." In the sudden dimness, the atmosphere shifted. Candlelight cast soft shadows across Lucian's features, softening the hard angles of his face, making him look younger, more vulnerable. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Serafina said impulsively, wrapping her hands around her mug for warmth. Lucian considered her, candlelight reflecting in his dark eyes. "I'm afraid of deep water," he admitted finally. Ironic for someone who builds waterfront properties. "Why?" "I nearly drowned as a child. My father threw me into Blackwater Lake to teach me to swim." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Serafina heard the old pain beneath. "Your turn," she thought for a moment. "I applied to Valerian Industries 3 times before I got an interview." His eyebrows rose. 3 times? The first 2 applications disappeared into the void. The 3rd time, I hand-delivered my resume to your assistant and refused to leave until she promised it would reach the right desk. Lucian's laugh was unexpected and beautiful, rich and genuine in a way his careful corporate chuckles never were. "I had no idea you were so persistent." "Determined," she corrected with a smile. "There's a difference." As the storm raged outside, they exchanged stories like precious gifts. His childhood refuge in public libraries, her mother's lupus diagnosis that shaped her teenage years, his first architectural design at 16, her sister's artistic talent. With each revelation, the professional distance between them diminished further. "What made you choose architecture?" she asked, their empty cups long forgotten. "You could have done anything." Lucian's expression turned contemplative. "When you grow up with nothing, shelter means everything. A roof, walls, they're the difference between safety and danger." His fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. "I wanted to build places that would protect people. Later, I realized buildings could do more than shelter bodies. They could inspire minds, create community, redefine skylines." "Is that why Valerian focuses on mixed-income developments?" He looked surprised that she'd noticed. "Partly. Everyone deserves beauty in their surroundings, not just those who can afford penthouses." "Yet you live in one," she observed without judgment. "A reminder," he said quietly, "of how far I've come, and how easy it would be to forget where I started." He paused as if considering whether to share something private. though the penthouse isn't where I feel most at home. No, this surprised her. I have a place outside the city, a farmhouse that belonged to my grandmother. I've restored and expanded it over the years. His voice softened with rare nostalgia. It's where I go when I need to remember who I really am, beneath the suits and boardroom speeches. Serafina tried to picture Lucian Vale, impeccable billionaire architect, at a farmhouse. The image was so incongruous it fascinated her. I wouldn't have guessed that about you. Few people know, he admitted. It's private. The fact that he'd shared this detail with her felt significant somehow, a small piece of the real man behind the CEO facade. The honesty in his voice touched something deep within her. This was a side of Lucian Vale the business world never saw. Thoughtful, principled, haunted by memories he rarely shared. What about you? He asked. Why business development instead of something else? Serafina smiled wryly. Practical considerations initially. Foster Creek doesn't produce many artists or dreamers. We're taught to seek stability. She paused. But I discovered I love the challenge of taking an idea from concept to reality. There's something powerful about watching communities transform because of something you helped create. You're changing lives, Lucian said softly. The Henderson Project will revitalize an entire neighborhood. If the board approves it, she reminded him, they will. The certainty in his voice surprised her. How can you be so sure? Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of the power he commanded. Because I'll make sure of it. The conviction in his voice reminded her of who he was, not just the man sharing confidences in candlelight, but Lucian Vale, whose word was practically law in the corporate world. You shouldn't show favoritism, she said carefully. It's not favoritism when it's the right decision. His eyes held hers. Your proposal is brilliant, Serafina. The board would be foolish to reject it. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the storm's continued assault outside. The elderly couple had departed, leaving them alone with the barista who discreetly kept her distance. What would you be doing now if you weren't stranded with me? Serafina asked. Lucian's mouth curved into a half smile. Reviewing contracts, alone. Sounds riveting. It's not, he admitted, though I've grown accustomed to solitude. Something in his tone made her heart ache. By choice, he considered this. Initially by circumstance, later, perhaps by habit. His eyes met hers across the table. And you? What would tonight have held? Helping Zora with college applications. She smiled fondly, then probably falling asleep to reruns of Great British Bake Off. Sounds nice, he said, surprising her with his sincerity. Simple pleasures. The best kind. His voice dropped slightly. I've found wealth buys many things, but rarely contentment. Another flash of lightning, another rumble of thunder, but this time more distant. The barista approached their table. Weather service says the worst is passing. Roads should be clearing within the hour. Thank you, Lucian acknowledged, then turned back to Serafina. It seems our impromptu shelter may not be needed much longer. She felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Their conversation in this candlelit cafe had revealed layers to Lucian she never suspected existed. Warmth beneath reserve, vulnerability beneath strength. I've enjoyed this, she admitted. Getting stranded, I mean. As have I, he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. More than you know. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. For a moment, she thought he might reach across the table and take her hand. Instead, he glanced at his watch. We should try again soon. The roads, I mean, he clarified, though something in his expression suggested dual meaning. When they finally left the cafe, the rain had diminished to a gentle patter. The air felt cleansed, the city washed anew. They drove in comfortable silence, the intimacy of their shared confidences lingering between them. As they approached her townhouse, Serafina wondered if something fundamental had shifted between them. The man beside her was still Lucian Vale, her boss and one of the most powerful men in the city. Yet tonight, she had glimpsed the human beneath the power, the boy from Riverdale who feared deep water, the architect who believed in beauty for all, the man who had grown comfortable with solitude but perhaps longed for more. When he pulled up to her home, he turned off the engine, a small gesture that spoke volumes. "Thank you," she said, "for the ride and the conversation. Both were my pleasure." His voice was low, intimate in the confined space. Silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Serafina found herself reluctant to leave, to break whatever spell had been cast during their storm-enforced seclusion. "Would you like to come in?" she heard herself ask. "For coffee or—" Lucian's expression changed, desire warring visibly with restraint. For a breathless moment, she thought he might accept. Then, regretfully, he shook his head. "Not tonight," he said softly. "Not like this." The rejection stung briefly until she recognized the respect underlying it. He wasn't refusing her. He was refusing to rush whatever was developing between them. "Another time, then," she said, understanding in her voice. "Another time," he agreed, the promise in his eyes making her heart race. As she watched him drive away, Serafina knew with absolute certainty that tonight had irreversibly altered their relationship. The storm had washed away their careful professional boundaries, revealing something far more complex and compelling beneath. She entered her home, her mind replaying every word, every glance, every almost touch. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she had been avoiding for weeks, perhaps longer. She was falling for Lucian Vale. Chapter 5. Unexpected Guardian. The Henderson project was approved unanimously by the board, cementing Serafina's reputation as one of Valerian Industries' most innovative developers. The celebration dinner with her team ran late into the evening, filled with champagne toasts and ambitious plans for implementation. "You deserve this, Sarah," Amara insisted, as they parted outside the restaurant. "This is your vision becoming reality." Serafina smiled, still buzzing with the thrill of victory. "Text me when you get home." "Always do. You sure you don't want to share a ride?" "My place is just a few blocks away. The walk will clear my head." Amara hesitated. "It's pretty late." "I'll be fine," Serafina assured her. "This part of town is safe." After another round of goodbyes, Serafina began her walk home, her mind replaying the day's success. Though Lucian had been absent from the board meeting, called away on urgent business to Chicago, his influence had been evident in the unanimous vote. She wondered if he'd heard about the approval yet, if he'd been pleased. Their relationship had shifted into undefined territory since the night of the storm 2 weeks ago. Nothing overt had changed, yet everything felt different, charged with unspoken awareness. Occasional texts about work had evolved to include personal touches, a photo of a rare first edition he'd found, knowing her love for classic literature, her sending him a picture of her sister's art installation, which he'd responded to with thoughtful appreciation. Small gestures, yet each felt significant, like foundations being laid, brick by careful brick. Lost in thought, Serafina didn't immediately notice the group of men who emerged from a side street ahead, 3 of them, laughing too loudly, movements slightly uncoordinated. She tensed, instinctively crossing to the opposite sidewalk. "Hey, beautiful," one called out. "Where you going so fast?" Serafina quickened her pace, grip tightening on her purse. The project files were backed up digitally, but her laptop contained preliminary sketches for another development she'd been exploring privately. "I'm talking to you," the man persisted, his friends now crossing the street toward her. "What's the rush?" "I'm not interested," she stated firmly, continuing to walk. "Stuck up, bitch," another muttered, loud enough for her to hear. Serafina's heart hammered, but she maintained her composure, mentally calculating the distance to the well-lit avenue ahead. Just 2 more blocks. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us," the third man said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. She pulled out her phone, finger hovering over the emergency call button. Before she could press it, a rough hand grabbed her arm, spinning her around. "I said, where you going?" The man's breath reeked of alcohol, his grip painfully tight. "Let go of me," Serafina demanded, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Or what? You gonna call the cops?" He laughed, glancing at his friends who had formed a loose circle around them. "We're just being friendly." "I said let go." She attempted to pull away, but his grip only tightened. "You need to learn some manners," he growled, face contorting with sudden anger. "Stuck-up women like you always do." What happened next occurred so quickly, Serafina barely registered the sequence of events. A blur of motion, the distinctive sound of a car door slamming. Then a voice, low, controlled, but vibrating with barely contained fury. "Take your hands off her. Now." Lucian Vale stood at the edge of the circle, his tall frame silhouetted against the streetlight. He wore the same tailored suit from his morning flight, though his tie was loosened, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. But nothing about his appearance diminished the aura of dangerous authority he radiated. The man holding Serafina's arm sneered. "Mind your own business, suit. This is between me and her. She is my business." Lucian's voice remained eerily calm, but his eyes, Serafina had never seen them so cold. "I won't ask again." Something in his tone made the man hesitate, his grip loosening fractionally. Serafina seized the opportunity to wrench her arm free, stumbling backward. "You should listen to your girlfriend," the second man taunted, stepping closer to Lucian. "Walk away while you can still walk." For an instant, Serafina saw uncertainty flicker across Lucian's face. Not fear, but calculation. He was outnumbered, and despite his height and the lean strength evident beneath his bespoke suit, he was not a man she associated with physical confrontation. "Lucian," she called, panic edging her voice. "Don't—" But her warning came too late. The first man lunged, swinging wildly at Lucian's face. What happened next demolished every preconception Serafina had about the reserved, controlled CEO. Lucian moved with astonishing speed and precision, sidestepping the punch while simultaneously delivering a devastating strike to his attacker's sternum. The man crumpled, gasping for breath. The second assailant charged, but Lucian was already pivoting, executing a move that sent the man flying over his shoulder to land hard on the concrete. The third man pulled a knife, its blade catching the dim streetlight. "You're dead," he snarled, circling cautiously. Serafina's breath caught in her throat. "Lucian." But Lucian's expression hadn't changed, still that terrifying calm, that focused intensity. When the knife wielder lunged, Lucian's response was ruthlessly efficient. A blocked thrust, a sharp crack of bone, and the knife clattered to the pavement along with its wielder, who howled in pain, clutching his clearly broken wrist. The first 2 men had recovered enough to regroup, advancing together this time. Lucian's back was to a wall now, but if he felt trapped, his demeanor didn't show it. He moved with lethal grace, each strike precise and devastating. Within moments, all 3 attackers lay groaning on the pavement. Silence descended, broken only by harsh breathing and the distant wail of a siren. Someone must have called the police. Lucian stood amid the fallen men, knuckles bleeding, chest rising and falling rapidly, but otherwise appearing unnervingly composed. Then he turned to Serafina, and something shifted in his demeanor. Not a complete transformation, but a modulation of the same intensity, now channeled into concern rather than combat. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice controlled but gentle, eyes scanning for any sign of injury. Serafina straightened her shoulders, pushing back the shock. This wasn't the first time she'd glimpsed unexpected dimensions to Lucian Vale. The man who remembered her sister's art program, who noticed when employees were struggling, who had emerged from Riverdale to build an empire. Of course, he contained multitudes beyond his boardroom persona. "I'm fine," she said firmly, then nodded toward his hand. "You're bleeding." Lucian glanced at his split knuckles with clinical detachment. "Superficial." One of the men groaned, attempting to rise. Lucian's head snapped around, his body immediately tensing, positioning himself between Serafina and potential threat. The man took one look at Lucian's expression and collapsed back to the pavement. "How did you?" she began, then shook her head. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Later," he said softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Police sirens grew louder. Lucian guided her to his car, parked haphazardly at the curb, engine still running. Once inside, he drove them away from the scene with controlled urgency. "We should talk to the police," Serafina said, her professional instincts reasserting themselves. "My security team will handle it," Lucian replied, pulling out his phone at a stoplight to send a brief text. "Joseph will make sure those men face consequences without involving you in a lengthy process." Joseph, head of my security detail, former Special Forces. He glanced at her. "Where would you feel safest right now? Your home? A hotel? The penthouse?" The offer of his home, so casually extended, momentarily distracted her from the night's events. "My place," she decided. "Please." They drove in silence for several minutes, Serafina processing what had just occurred, studying Lucian's profile in the dim glow of passing streetlights. His focus on the road seemed absolute, but she could see tension in the set of his jaw, the tight grip of his hands on the steering wheel. "You were supposed to be in Chicago," she said finally. "I came back early, and just happened to be driving by as I was being attacked." His silence answered her question more clearly than words could have. "You were following me," she realized, shock giving way to confusion. "Why?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "I wasn't following you specifically. I was driving to your home to congratulate you on the Henderson approval when I saw you walking." He paused. "I was about to call out when those men appeared." "The way you fought," she began. "Military," he supplied, his voice neutral. 4 years, special operations before I started Valerian. It's not in my official biography." Serafina absorbed this revelation, another layer to the complex man beside her. "You could have been hurt, or worse." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "They weren't particularly skilled." "That's not funny, Lucian. They had a knife, and you were in danger." His voice softened. There was no choice to make. Something in those simple words made her heart constrict. They had reached her townhouse, but neither made a move to exit the car. "Let me see your hand," she said quietly. Reluctantly, he extended his right hand, knuckles raw and still seeping blood. Serafina gently cradled it between her own, examining the damage. "You need to clean this properly." "It's fine." "It's not fine," she interrupted. "Come inside. I have a first aid kit." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded, following her into her modest home. In her kitchen, beneath the bright overhead light, Lucian looked strangely out of place. His expensive suit incongruous against her cheerful yellow walls and mismatched vintage chairs. Serafina retrieved her first aid kit, gesturing for him to sit at the small table. He complied silently, watching as she dampened a clean cloth. "This might sting," she warned, gently cleaning the torn skin. Lucian didn't flinch, his eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. The intimacy of the moment, her hands tending to his, the shared breathing space between them, felt monumental somehow. "Thank you," she said softly, applying antibiotic ointment to his knuckles. "For what you did tonight." "I'd do it again," he replied, voice barely above a whisper. "For you, I'd do anything." Her hands stilled at his declaration, eyes lifting to meet his. The raw emotion she found there stole her breath. For 5 years, she had known Lucian Vale as her brilliant, reserved employer. Tonight, she had glimpsed the warrior beneath the businessman's exterior. And now, sitting in her kitchen with his guard completely lowered, she was seeing something else. A man whose carefully constructed walls had crumbled, revealing feelings too powerful to conceal. "Why?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Lucian's uninjured hand rose slowly, as if giving her time to retreat, before tenderly tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because you matter to me, Serafina, more than I can express." The air between them seemed charged with electricity. Serafina felt herself leaning closer, drawn by an invisible force. Lucian's eyes darkened, his gaze dropping to her lips. Just as the distance between them began to close, his phone rang shrilly, shattering the moment. Lucian closed his eyes briefly, jaw clenching in frustration before he retrieved the device. "Vale," he answered tersely, then listened. "Yes, she's safe." "No, I'm fine. Handle it." Another pause. "Tomorrow." He ended the call with a sigh. "The police have the men in custody. My security team is managing the situation." Serafina nodded, reality rushing back. She finished bandaging his hand in silence, acutely aware of the moment that had slipped away. When she was done, Lucian stood. "I should go." She walked him to the door, neither speaking but both keenly aware of the shift that had occurred between them. On her threshold, he turned to face her. "Serafina," he began, then seemed to struggle for words, an unusual circumstance for a man known for his articulate precision. "Yes," she prompted gently. "I'm not good at this," he admitted, frustration evident in his voice, "at expressing feelings." "You're doing fine," she assured him, smiling softly. He shook his head. "What I'm trying to say is—" "I know," she interrupted, saving him from his struggle. "Me too." Relief and something deeper washed over his features. "We should talk, properly, when we're not." He gestured vaguely. "Dealing with this." "I'd like that," she agreed. His eyes searched hers for a long moment before he reluctantly stepped back. "Good night, Serafina." "Good night, Lucian." She watched from her doorway as he walked to his car, his tall figure cutting a distinguished silhouette against the night. Just before getting in, he turned back, their eyes meeting across the distance. Something unspoken yet profound passed between them, a promise, a possibility, a beginning. As his car disappeared around the corner, Serafina closed her door, leaning against it. Her heart raced not from the lingering fear of the attack, but from the certainty that everything between her and Lucian Vale had changed irrevocably tonight. The reserved, untouchable CEO had revealed himself as her fierce protector, and in doing so had shown her the depth of feelings he could no longer conceal. Chapter 6. Night Vigil. In the weeks following the attack, Serafina and Lucian's relationship evolved through small gestures. Morning coffee appearing on her desk, lingering conversations after meetings, brief touches that sent electricity through her skin. The Henderson project demanded her complete attention, while Lucian negotiated with international investors, leaving their promised conversation perpetually delayed. "You're different lately," Zora observed one Sunday, her artistic eye missing nothing as they browsed an art supply store. "Distracted in a good way." Serafina examined a set of paintbrushes with unnecessary attention. "I'm just busy with Henderson." Zora hummed skeptically. "And does Henderson have dark eyes and wear custom suits?" "It's complicated," Serafina admitted finally. "He's Lucian Vale. So, you both came from nothing. You both built yourselves up. You care about the same things, Zora reasoned, selecting a tube of cobalt blue paint. Your worlds align where it matters. The truth was, Serafina wasn't afraid of their differences. She was afraid of the intensity of her feelings for him, how quickly they had grown, how completely they had overtaken her carefully ordered life. Monday brought crisis. The Henderson project's contractor backed out unexpectedly. By evening, Serafina sat alone in her office, a pounding headache making it difficult to focus on the spreadsheet of potential replacements. You need to eat, Lucian appeared in her doorway, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. In one hand, he held a paper bag emanating delicious aromas. I was going to grab something on my way home, she lied. When would that be? Midnight. He entered without waiting for invitation. Korean, from that place on 7th you mentioned liking. As they shared dinner, discussing solutions to the contractor problem, their conversation flowed easily from work to personal matters. Her sister's upcoming gallery showing, a book he'd recently finished that he thought she'd enjoy. The easy companionship felt both natural and extraordinary. You're pale, he observed, studying her with concern. And you've been rubbing your temple every few minutes. When she stood to leave, dizziness overwhelmed her. Lucian was instantly at her side, his arms supporting her waist. When did you last sleep properly? He asked, voice low with concern. Define properly, she attempted to joke, but even to her own ears, her voice sounded weak. In the parking garage, the fluorescent light sent searing pain through her skull. The last thing she remembered was Lucian calling her name, his voice sharp with alarm before darkness claimed her. Consciousness returned slowly. First, awareness of softness beneath her. Then the scent of clean sheets and something subtly masculine. Finally, the gentle pressure of something cool against her forehead. Serafina opened her eyes to find Lucian seated beside the bed, concern etched in his features. You collapsed, he explained, removing the cool cloth from her forehead to dampen it again. Exhaustion and dehydration, according to the doctor. Where am I? She asked, taking in the spacious bedroom with its minimalist yet luxurious decor. My home? He looked momentarily uncertain. I didn't want to frighten Zora by bringing you home in that condition. The consideration behind his decision touched her deeply. Thank you. You've been pushing yourself too hard, he said, no judgment in his voice. Henderson isn't worth your health. Says the man who regularly works 18-hour days, she countered weakly. A smile ghosted across his face. Do as I say, not as I do. Serafina noticed his disheveled appearance, rumpled shirt, stubble shadowing his jaw. Evidence of a night spent keeping vigil. What time is it? Just after 4. In the morning. Lucian, you should be sleeping. You have the Singapore conference call at 7. His eyebrows rose slightly. You memorized my schedule? The important parts, she admitted, feeling unexpectedly vulnerable in the confession. Something warm flickered in his eyes. The call can wait. Billions of dollars depend on that call. And the simplicity of his response, the clear implication that her well-being outweighed business concerns, left her speechless. Sleep, he urged softly as fatigue swept through her. I'll be here. You don't have to stay, she murmured, fighting to keep her eyes open. I'm not leaving you, he insisted, his quiet conviction wrapping around her like a blanket. As she drifted toward unconsciousness, she felt his hand gently cover hers, his thumb tracing slow circles on her skin. A simple touch that followed her into dreams. When she woke hours later, sunlight filtering through partially drawn curtains, Lucian had fallen asleep in a nearby armchair, his position painfully uncomfortable, one hand still extended toward the bed as if reaching for her even in sleep. The sight of powerful, commanding Lucian Vale, vulnerable in slumber, having spent the night watching over her, created an ache in her chest she couldn't name. Moving quietly, she explored what she now realized was Lucian's bedroom. Unlike the cold, sterile space she might have expected, it was warm and surprisingly personal. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with well-worn volumes. A framed photograph caught her attention. Lucian, much younger, arm around an elderly woman with kind eyes. His grandmother, Serafina guessed, recalling a rare personal comment about the woman who had raised him after his mother's death. "You should be resting," his deep voice startled her. She turned to find Lucian awake, watching her with those intense dark eyes. Despite his rumpled appearance, he radiated a quiet dignity. "I feel better," she assured him, though she moved to sit on the edge of the bed, recognizing her lingering weakness. Dr. Chen arrived shortly after, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who examined Serafina with professional efficiency, while making it clear that her primary loyalty lay with Lucian. "He was quite concerned about you," she remarked, checking Serafina's blood pressure. "I haven't seen him so agitated in years." After prescribing 2 days of complete rest, the doctor departed, leaving Serafina to process the reality that Lucian Vale, who commanded an empire with unwavering authority, had spent the night in an uncomfortable chair simply to ensure her safety. "I should go home," she said without conviction when Lucian returned freshly showered. "Zora will worry." "I called her last night," he assured her, sitting beside her on the bed. "She knows you're safe. She also threatened me with creative bodily harm if I don't ensure you actually rest." Serafina laughed despite herself. "That sounds like Zora." "She's quite protective of you," he observed, "as she should be." A comfortable silence settled between them, charged with unspoken feelings. In this moment of shared vulnerability, her physical weakness, his emotional exposure, something profound had shifted between them. For perhaps the first time in her life, Serafina Niella had allowed someone else to care for her, and in doing so, had glimpsed a truth she could no longer deny. The depth of feeling that had developed between them went far beyond professional respect or casual attraction. It was, quite simply, the beginning of love. Chapter 7. Hidden Truths. Curiosity about Lucian's past consumed Serafina during her forced rest. After returning to her own home, she found herself researching him. Not the public figure whose accomplishments filled business publications, but the man behind the empire. The information came in fragments. A small newspaper clipping about a teenage Lucian winning an architectural design competition despite living in the city's poorest district. A footnote in a charity report about anonymous donations to Foster Creek Community Center, precisely when her sister's art program needed funding. Records of a scholarship foundation that had helped underprivileged students from Riverdale, Lucian's childhood neighborhood. "Did you know about this?" she asked Zora, showing her the community center report. Zora studied it, eyes widening. This saved the program. They were about to cut it completely when suddenly funding appeared. She looked up. "You think it was him?" "The timing fits," Serafina said. "And he knew about your art without me telling him." Each discovery revealed a pattern of quiet generosity that never sought recognition. The public knew Lucian Vale as a brilliant, ruthless businessman. They never saw the man who remembered what it meant to have nothing. When Serafina returned to work, something had shifted between them. Their glances held longer, conversations deepened, and an unspoken understanding grew that what lay between them had become inevitable. "Welcome back," Lucian said when they first met in the corridor, his eyes warming at the sight of her. "You were missed." The simple statement carried weight beyond professional courtesy. She smiled, noticing the slight softening around his mouth that only appeared when they were alone. "The Henderson project survived without me, I see," she remarked. "The project, yes?" His voice lowered slightly. "Not everyone fared as well with your absence." Before she could respond to this near admission, Marcus approached with urgent documents requiring Lucian's attention. The moment passed, but its significance lingered. Later that day, Amara cornered Serafina in the break room. "Something's different about Vale," she observed. "He's been accessible, almost human." "He's always been human," Serafina defended instinctively. Amara raised an eyebrow. "Not like this. Yesterday he asked how my mother's surgery went. He remembered her name, Sarah." She studied her friend's expression. "What happened between you two?" "Nothing happened," Serafina replied, though the warmth creeping up her neck suggested otherwise. Amara's skepticism was palpable. "Well, whatever this nothing is, it looks good on both of you." That evening, as the office emptied, Serafina found herself alone with her thoughts. Lucian had left for a business dinner, but had asked her to review documents for tomorrow's meeting and leave them on his desk. It was his birthday, she realized suddenly, remembering the date from her research. 40 years old today, and spending it at yet another business function. Making her way to his office, she placed the folder on his immaculate desk. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught on a framed photo she hadn't noticed before, the same one from his bedroom of young Lucian with his grandmother. The fact that he kept it here, in his most professional space, spoke volumes. Her gaze drifted to his desk drawer, slightly ajar. Professional ethics warred briefly with curiosity before the latter one. Inside lay a small, carved wooden box that seemed at odds with the sleek modernity of his office. Before she could close the drawer, her office phone rang, startling her. It was Jordan from security. "Mr. Vale left his presentation folder," he explained. "He called asking if you could bring it to St. Michael's Church on Thornfield Street. He's stopping there before his dinner." "St. Michael's?" Serafina repeated, surprised. "He's at church." "Goes there sometimes," Jordan said casually. "Usually on his birthday." 20 minutes later, Serafina stood outside the small stone church, Lucian's forgotten folder in hand. The building was modest compared to the grand cathedral downtown, tucked away on a quiet street, far from Valerian Tower's sleek prestige. She entered quietly, the heavy door closing softly behind her. The sanctuary was dimly lit and seemingly empty until she spotted a solitary figure kneeling in prayer near the altar. Lucian. She should announce her presence, she knew. Yet something held her in place, the rare sight of this powerful man in a moment of complete vulnerability. His head was bowed, one hand clutching something small that caught the candlelight. A necklace, perhaps. "I've spent my life building walls," his voice carried in the quiet space, unaware of her presence. "Creating something from nothing, protecting myself from ever feeling helpless again." Serafina remained frozen in the shadows of the entryway, knowing she should leave but unable to move. "But she sees through every wall," Lucian continued, his voice softer now. "And I'm terrified, not of loving her. I've done that silently for years, but of losing her once she knows the truth about me, about the darkness I came from." Her breath caught. She should not be hearing this. These weren't words meant for her ears, yet she couldn't bring herself to interrupt this raw moment of confession. "Give me strength," he murmured, "to tell her everything, to offer her my heart, damaged as it is, to risk everything for Serafina." The sound of her name on his lips in prayer sent a shock through her system. Lucian Vale, who commanded an empire with unwavering authority, was on his knees praying for the courage to love her. She backed away silently, slipping out the heavy door without betraying her presence. Outside, the cool evening air filled her lungs as she leaned against the stone wall, mind racing with what she'd witnessed. 5 years of professional distance, months of growing awareness, weeks of unspoken feelings. And now the confirmation that Lucian Vale had been silently loving her all along, afraid not of the depth of his feelings, but that she might reject him if she knew the full truth of his past. As she gathered her composure, A decision crystallized in her mind. If Lucian couldn't find the courage to bridge the final distance between them, perhaps it was time she took that step herself. Chapter 8. The Prayer Overheard. Serafina couldn't sleep that night, Lucian's prayer echoing in her mind. His words revealed a truth she had sensed but never confirmed, that his feelings for her ran as deep as hers for him. She replayed the scene countless times, his kneeling figure illuminated by candlelight, the raw vulnerability in his voice as he whispered her name, the fears he confessed only to God and the empty church. Or so he had thought. Dawn found her sitting at her kitchen window, watching the city awaken as her decision crystallized. 5 years of professional distance, months of growing awareness, weeks of unspoken feelings. It was time for words, or perhaps actions that spoke louder than any declaration. At the office, she maintained her usual professional demeanor, though her heart raced whenever Lucian entered a room. She noticed things about him she'd always seen, but now understood differently. The way his eyes sought her in meetings, how he created opportunities for their hands to brush when exchanging documents, his body angling toward hers unconsciously when they spoke. He seemed different, too, more open, less guarded, as though his prayer had somehow lightened a burden he'd carried for years. When he smiled at her across the conference table, it reached his eyes in a way that made her breath catch. The fundraiser for the Henderson Project is tonight, he reminded her during their afternoon meeting. The entire board will be there. I remember, she replied, studying his face. The face she now realized she'd memorized without intending to. The slight crease between his brows when he concentrated. The rare dimple that appeared with genuine smiles. I should leave early to prepare, he said, glancing at his watch. It's at my farmhouse outside the city. You have the address? Yes, the car service is arranged? He nodded, hesitating as if wanting to say more. His fingers tapped briefly on the folder between them, an uncharacteristic display of nervousness. Serafina, he began, then paused, seeming to reconsider. I'm glad you'll be there tonight. Such a simple statement, yet the intensity in his eyes suggested layers of meaning beneath the words. I wouldn't miss it, she replied softly. The Henderson Project means too much. Yes, he agreed, though something in his expression suggested they weren't just discussing the project. It does. As Serafina prepared for the fundraiser that evening, she chose her dress with particular care, a deep crimson gown that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor. The color was bold, unexpected, a departure from the conservative blues and blacks she typically wore to professional events. Zora whistled when she emerged from her bedroom. Wow, that's not your usual fundraiser look. Serafina smoothed the rich fabric, heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. Tonight isn't usual. Her sister's eyes widened with understanding. You're going to tell him how you feel. Something like that, Serafina replied, unable to explain the plan taking shape in her mind, a plan too audacious to voice aloud. About time, Zora grinned, helping her with her necklace. The way you two look at each other when you think no one notices. She shook her head. It's been painful to watch. Before leaving, Serafina made one last call to the event coordinator handling the fundraiser. The woman had been surprised by her request, but agreed readily. A generous tip ensured both her assistance and her discretion. The drive to Lucian's farmhouse took her through rolling countryside, autumn colors painting the landscape in fiery hues that matched her dress. When the car turned onto a private road lined with ancient oaks, she felt a flutter of nerves. What she planned was bold, perhaps too bold. Yet the memory of Lucian's prayer gave her courage. What she had expected to be a modern mansion instead revealed itself as a beautifully restored 19th century farmhouse, expanded but retaining its historic charm. Warm lights glowed from every window, and the sounds of celebration spilled from open doors. Inside, the fundraiser was in full swing. Board members mingled with investors and city officials, all united in support of the Henderson project. Amara spotted her immediately, weaving through the crowd to reach her. "Look at you," she exclaimed, eyeing the crimson dress appreciatively. "Someone's making a statement tonight." Serafina smiled enigmatically. "Is Lucian here?" "Playing perfect host in the East Wing," Amara replied, a knowing glint in her eye. "He's asked about you twice already." For the next hour, Serafina circulated professionally, advocating for her vision while scanning the crowd for Lucian. When she finally spotted him across the room, their eyes locked in an instant of electric recognition. The conversation he was engaged in seemed to fade from his awareness as his gaze took in her crimson dress, lingering with unmistakable appreciation. He excused himself from his conversation and began making his way toward her, only to be intercepted by the mayor. Serafina watched as Lucian's attention was claimed by one person after another. Each time he attempted to reach her, someone else demanded his time, the price of being host and CEO. Their game of near encounters continued throughout the evening, building a delicious tension that seemed to crackle in the air between them. Once he managed to reach her side for a brief moment, his hand brushing the small of her back as he leaned close. "You look breathtaking," he murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Before she could respond, the head of the investors' committee appeared, pulling Lucian away for introductions. The warmth of his touch lingered long after he'd gone. Late in the evening, she overheard him quietly asking Marcus to take over hosting duties. "There's something I need to attend to," he said, his voice carrying an unusual note of urgency. She followed at a discreet distance as he slipped away from the main gathering, climbing the stairs to what must be his private quarters. The moment had come. Taking a deep breath, Serafina gave the event coordinator a subtle nod from across the room. The woman acknowledged with a slight incline of her head, confirmation that everything was prepared. Then Serafina made her way upstairs, heart pounding with each step. The hallway was dimly lit, old wooden floors creaking softly beneath her heels. At his bedroom door, she hesitated only briefly before entering. The room was spacious yet intimate, with a four-poster bed dominating the space. True to her instructions, it was adorned with scattered rose petals in deep crimson and white, an elegant contrast against the dark blue bedding. Candles flickered on the dresser and nightstands, casting the room in a warm, golden glow. Serafina positioned herself at the edge of the bed, smoothing her crimson dress across the wine-colored petals. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, questioning her boldness, then reaffirming her decision. Her entire body hummed with anticipation, with the knowledge that after tonight, everything would change. When the door finally opened, Lucian froze in the threshold, dark eyes widening at the vision before him. Shock, disbelief, and unmistakable desire crossed his features in rapid succession. He stood completely still, as though afraid any movement might cause the scene before him to dissolve like a dream. "Serafina," he breathed her name like a prayer, echoing the reverence she'd heard in the church. She rose slowly, the crimson fabric flowing around her like liquid fire. "I heard you," she said simply. "In the church. I heard your prayer." Color drained from his face as understanding dawned. "You were there?" "I came to bring your presentation folder. I didn't mean to overhear, but I did." She moved toward him with measured steps, the distance between them shrinking with each heartbeat. "Every word." "Serafina, he began, uncertainty replacing his usual confidence. She placed her finger against his lips, silencing him. "You don't have to say it. I already know." Then, with all the courage she possessed, she replaced her finger with her lips, kissing him with 5 years of unspoken longing. For a heartbeat, Lucian remained still, as if afraid movement might shatter this moment. Then, with a sound that was half groan and half surrender, his arms encircled her, pulling her against him as he returned her kiss with equal passion. The world narrowed to this, his lips on hers, his hands cradling her face with a tenderness that belied their strength, the solid warmth of his body against hers. When they finally parted, breathless, tears glistened in his eyes, tears only a man who had loved beyond words could understand. 5 years, he whispered against her hair. 5 years of loving you silently. No more silence, she murmured back. No more waiting. His hands traced the curve of her waist with reverent care. I've dreamed of this, he confessed, of you, but reality. He shook his head slightly, wonder in his expression. Reality surpasses every dream. Serafina guided him toward the bed, the rose petals a fragrant cushion beneath them as they sank down together. Show me, she whispered. Show me what you've dreamed. That night, as the fundraiser continued without them, Lucian and Serafina found in each other's arms the belonging they had both sought all their lives. Every touch, every whispered confession, every passionate embrace was a bridge spanning the distance they had maintained for too long. I've wanted you from the moment you walked into that interview, Lucian admitted, his lips tracing the curve of her shoulder. Not just your beauty, though, God knows you took my breath away. It was your mind, your determination, your compassion that I fell for. Serafina's fingers traced the planes of his chest, marveling at the strength there. I thought you were intimidating, untouchable, she confessed. I never imagined you noticed me beyond my work. I noticed everything, he said, voice rough with emotion. The way you hum when concentrating, how you remember everyone's birthdays, your quiet generosity that seeks no recognition. In the quiet aftermath, as moonlight spilled across the tangled sheets, Lucian traced the curve of her cheek with gentle fingers. I was afraid, he admitted, that you wouldn't want me if you knew where I came from, what I've done to survive. Serafina captured his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. Your past shaped you, but it doesn't define you. I love the man you've become because of it, not despite it. The word love hung between them, finally spoken aloud. Lucian's eyes darkened with emotion as he pulled her closer. Say it again, he requested softly. I love you, she repeated, the words both a revelation and a confirmation of something she had known for longer than she'd been willing to admit. I love you, Lucian Vale. His kiss in response was tender, unhurried, a promise rather than a demand. And I love you, Serafina Niel, with everything I am and everything I have. As dawn approached, they shared not just their bodies, but their histories, their dreams, their fears, the complete truths that had remained hidden for too long. Lucian spoke of his violent father, of protecting his mother until her death from cancer when he was 14, of the grandmother who had saved him from the streets, but couldn't save him from the anger that had driven him for years. I built Valerian from nothing, he said, but for so long it was fueled by the need to prove myself, to become someone my father couldn't touch, someone with enough power that I'd never be helpless again. Serafina shared her own struggles, the weight of responsibility thrust upon her at 16 when her father abandoned the family, the sacrifices she'd made to ensure Zora had opportunities she never had. We're more alike than different, she observed, tracing patterns on his skin. Both shaped by loss, both driven to create something lasting. Lucian nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Perhaps that's why I recognized something in you from the beginning, a kindred spirit behind professional walls. As the first light of morning gilded the room, they lay entwined, neither willing to break the spell of intimacy that had woven around them. The world outside, with its meetings and contracts and corporate hierarchies, seemed distant and unimportant compared to the truth they had discovered in each other's arms. What happens now? Serafina asked finally, her head resting on his chest, his heartbeat strong beneath her ear. Lucian's arms tightened around her. Now, he said with quiet certainty. We build something together, something even more meaningful than what we've built apart. In that moment, as the rising sun bathed them in golden light, Serafina knew with absolute certainty that loving Lucian Vale and being loved by him in return would be the greatest adventure of her life. Chapter 9. Roses and Revelations. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Lucian's bedroom, casting golden patterns across the tangled sheets. Serafina woke slowly, momentarily disoriented before memories of the night flooded back. Her bold decision, the rose petals, Lucian's awestruck expression, and the hours of passion and confession that followed. She turned to find him watching her, dark eyes soft with an emotion she was still adjusting to seeing there, love, unhidden and unrestrained. "Good morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. His fingers traced the curve of her shoulder with reverent care. "I was afraid I'd dreamed you." "Not a dream," she assured him, leaning into his touch, "though it feels like one." He pulled her closer, his kiss tender and unhurried. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me today," he requested. "The world can wait." Responsibility tugged at her. "The Henderson Project will still be there tomorrow," he finished. "Today is ours." The simple declaration held such promise that Serafina found herself nodding. "Ours," she echoed, savoring the word. They spent the morning in a bubble of intimacy, sharing breakfast in bed, talking, laughing, exploring each other with the freedom of acknowledged love. Lucian revealed facets of himself she'd never glimpsed in 5 years, a dry wit, a surprising playfulness, a depth of tenderness that made her heart ache. "I've never brought anyone here before," he admitted as they walked through his gardens later, hand in hand. The farmhouse grounds stretched before them, a perfect blend of wild beauty and careful tending. "This place has always been my sanctuary." "It's beautiful," Serafina said, understanding the significance of his sharing it with her. So different from what people would expect of Lucian Vale, business titan. He smiled, a flash of vulnerability crossing his features. "That's precisely why I love it. Here, I'm not that person. Just Lucian." "Just Lucian is who I fell in love with," she replied, squeezing his hand, "though the business titan has his appeal too." His laugh sent warmth coursing through her. "Good to know both versions of me have your approval." As they reached a rose garden in full bloom, Lucian grew quiet, his expression turning contemplative. "My grandmother planted these," he explained, touching a crimson bloom gently. "After she took me in, we'd work in this garden together. It was healing." Serafina listened as he shared stories of his grandmother, a strong, practical woman who had saved him from foster care after his mother's death, who had recognized his architectural talent and scraped together money for drafting supplies, who had taught him that true strength lay in compassion, not power. "She would have loved you," he said, tucking a strand of hair behind Serafina's ear. "She always said I needed someone who could see past my walls." "Smart woman. The wisest I've known," he agreed. "Until you." They continued exploring the property, Lucian pointing out the original farmhouse structure he'd preserved while expanding the home, the pond where he'd learned to swim properly, the old oak where he'd built a treehouse as a teenager. "I can't believe you've kept this place so private," Serafina remarked as they returned to the house. "It's such an important part of who you are." "Privacy has always been my instinct," he acknowledged, keeping separate worlds, business, personal, compartmentalizing. "And now?" she asked, searching his face. His expression softened. "Now I find myself wanting to integrate those worlds. Because of you." Inside, they discovered that Marcus had diplomatically handled the post-fundraiser logistics, leaving them a note about the event's success and assurances that everything at the office was under control. Subtle, Serafina laughed, reading between the lines of Marcus's carefully worded message. "He's known how I felt about you for years," Lucian admitted, looking slightly sheepish. "He's been rather vocal about my hesitation." The afternoon found them curled together on a wide porch swing, watching clouds drift across the autumn sky. The intimacy between them had a dreamlike quality, as though they'd been granted a temporary reprieve from reality to explore this new territory of acknowledged love. "What are you thinking?" Lucian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. Serafina considered the question. "That I never expected this. Us." She shifted to look at him. "For so long you were this untouchable figure, brilliant, commanding, distant. And now? Now I know the man behind that image, the one who prays in empty churches and plants roses in memory of his grandmother." She traced the line of his jaw. "The one who loves more deeply than anyone I've ever known." Something vulnerable flashed in his eyes. "I've never been good at expressing feelings, at letting people close." "You're doing fine," she assured him. His hand captured hers, bringing it to his lips. "Because it's you. With you, I find words I didn't know I had." The simple honesty of his statement touched something deep within her. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms with unflinching authority was offering her his most guarded possession, his heart. "I have something for you," he said suddenly, rising from the swing. "Wait here." When he returned minutes later, he held a small velvet box. Serafina's breath caught, her heart accelerating. "It's not what you're thinking," he said quickly, noting her expression. "Though that conversation isn't far from my mind." He sat beside her again, opening the box to reveal a delicate silver pendant, a small, intricately detailed rose hanging from a fine chain. "It was my mother's," he explained, voice soft with memory. "One of the few beautiful things she managed to keep during the worst times. My grandmother gave it to me before she died, said I should give it to the woman who finally broke through my walls." Tears pricked Serafina's eyes as he continued. "I've kept it in that wooden box you saw in my office. For years I thought I'd never find someone I'd want to give it to." "Lucian," she whispered, overwhelmed by the significance of the gesture. "You don't have to accept it," he said quickly. "I know it's soon." "No," she interrupted, capturing his face between her palms. "It's perfect. I'm honored." Relief and joy transformed his features as he fastened the necklace around her throat, his fingers lingering against her skin. The pendant rested just below her collarbone, catching the late afternoon light. "It looks right on you," he murmured, "like it was always meant to be yours." Later, as darkness fell, they lay together in his bed, the physical expression of their love giving way to quiet conversation. The outside world began to intrude on their sanctuary as reality reasserted itself. "People will talk," Serafina said, her head resting on his chest, "when they find out about us." Lucian's arms tightened around her. "Let them. It won't be simple. Office politics, professional boundaries. Nothing worth having is simple," he replied. "But if you're concerned about your position or reputation—" "I'm not," she assured him. "I just want to be prepared. For both our sakes." He was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. "What if we don't hide? What if we're open from the start?" Serafina propped herself up to look at him, surprised. "You want to go public? Immediately?" "Not with press releases," he clarified, smiling slightly. "But yes, I don't want to skulk around pretending we're just colleagues. I've spent 5 years hiding how I feel about you. I don't want to hide anymore." The decisiveness in his voice sent a thrill through her. This was Lucian Vale, the man who built empires through careful strategy and measured risks, proposing they face the potential complications of their relationship head-on. "Okay," she agreed, heart racing with both anxiety and excitement. "No hiding. His smile was radiant, transforming his usually serious features. "No hiding," he repeated, sealing the promise with a kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent. Later, drifting towards sleep in his arms, Serafina realized the enormity of what had happened in just 24 hours. She had entered this room as Lucian's employee and colleague, harboring unspoken feelings. She would leave it as the woman he loved, openly, completely, without reservation. The silver rose pendant rested against her skin, a tangible symbol of the shift. No longer was Lucian Vale the distant, untouchable CEO. He was simply hers, and she was his. As sleep claimed her, she felt him press a gentle kiss to her temple. "I love you, Serafina Niel," he whispered, perhaps thinking she was already asleep. "I love you too," she murmured back, feeling him smile against her skin. Tomorrow would bring challenges, navigating their professional relationship, facing colleagues' reactions, integrating their separate lives. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, those concerns seemed distant and manageable. They had found in each other what both had searched for all their lives, not just passion or companionship, but a true partner who understood the road they had traveled and the person they had become because of it. And that, Serafina reflected as sleep overtook her, was worth any complication the world might throw their way. Chapter 10. Public Declaration. After a blissful weekend secluded at Lucian's farmhouse, reality awaited. The drive back to the city Monday morning held a surreal quality. Meetings, project deadlines, and the inevitable reactions to their changed relationship would test what had blossomed in privacy. "Are you nervous?" Lucian asked, briefly taking his eyes off the road. Serafina touched the silver rose pendant now hanging at her throat. "A little, but not about us. Just the logistics." His hand reached for hers. "We'll figure it out together." They had discussed strategy over breakfast. Lucian would inform the board chairman and legal department first thing, establishing proper protocols for project approvals and evaluations. Serafina would report directly to Marcus going forward. "Professional boundaries at work," she reiterated. "Absolutely," he agreed, though his eyes held a mischievous glint. They arrived separately at Valerian Tower. Serafina spent the morning buried in Henderson project updates, fielding curious glances from Amara, who clearly suspected something had changed. Her phone chimed with a message from Lucian, requesting her presence in the main conference room for an urgent meeting. This wasn't part of their morning discussion. Entering the conference room, Serafina found most of the executive team already assembled. Lucian stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began. "I've called this meeting to address something that will affect the company going forward." The atmosphere tensed immediately. In Valerian's history, unexpected announcements had sometimes meant restructuring or major strategic shifts. "I've recently begun a personal relationship with a colleague," he stated clearly. "One that I believe will become a significant and lasting part of my life." Murmurs rippled through the room as Lucian outlined the protocols being implemented, the reporting structure changes, the oversight procedures for projects. Marcus spoke up. "I think I speak for everyone when I say we appreciate your transparency, Lucian. But you've managed to share this news without actually telling us who the lucky woman is." A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. "The woman I'm referring to," Lucian said, his voice gentler now, "is Serafina Niele." Every head turned toward her. Serafina maintained her composure, chin lifting slightly. "Ms. Niel's professional contributions to Valerian are well documented and stand on their own merit," Lucian continued. "Her relationship with me does not diminish her accomplishments." As the meeting disbanded, many offered smiles or nods as they passed. Amara squeezed her shoulder supportively, mouthing, "Details later." Finally, only Lucian remained, closing the conference room door. That wasn't the plan, Serafina said quietly. I know, he acknowledged. I made a decision this morning. Without consulting me, she pointed out. You're right, I should have discussed it with you first. He took her hands. But I realized something driving in today. All those years of silence, they were about compartmentalizing my life, and I didn't want to start our relationship the same way. It was quite a statement, she said, a smile tugging at her lips. Too much? Bold, unexpected, and thorough. Exactly what I should have anticipated from you. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and curious glances. By evening, exhaustion competed with a strange sense of exhilaration. Her phone chimed with a message from Lucian. Dinner? My place? I'll cook. Didn't know you could cook, she replied. One of my many hidden talents. 8 p.m. I'll be there. Lucian's penthouse revealed the private man, bookshelves filled with classics, framed architectural sketches, a vintage record player surrounded by jazz albums. My grandmother introduced me to it, he explained. She said it was sophisticated rebellion, structured but free. Like you, Serafina noted. Later, as they stood on his balcony overlooking the glittering city, Lucian's arms encircled her from behind. Regrets? He asked softly. Serafina leaned back against his warmth. About us? None. She turned in his embrace. About the very public announcement? Ask me in a week. His laugh was low and rich. Fair enough. What about you? Second thoughts about declaring your feelings to the entire executive team. Not one, he said firmly. 5 years of silence was enough. The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. This powerful, reserved man had not only acknowledged his feelings privately, but declared them publicly, prioritizing their relationship over corporate convention. I love you, she said simply. His eyes darkened with emotion as he drew her closer. And I love you, he murmured against her lips. The kiss that followed held both passion and promise, of nights like this, stretching into a shared future, of challenges faced together, of a love that had finally found its voice after years of silence. Chapter 11. Eternal Promises. The months following their public declaration transformed both their personal and professional lives. The Henderson project moved from planning to implementation, with contractors breaking ground on the first phase while Serafina's team finalized designs for the community center. Meanwhile, their relationship deepened beyond the initial passion into something more profound, a true partnership in every sense. Spring arrived, bringing with it the groundbreaking ceremony for the Henderson project. Standing before the gathered crowd, Serafina felt a sense of accomplishment, unlike any in her career. This isn't just about buildings, she told the audience, passion evident in her voice. It's about creating spaces where families can thrive, where children can play safely, where community can grow organically. From his position at the side of the stage, Lucian watched her with undisguised pride. She had fought for this vision, refined it, championed it through every obstacle. That evening, as they walked through the quiet streets of Foster Creek, her childhood neighborhood that would be transformed by the development, Lucian seemed unusually contemplative. I had a different plan, he began as they reached a small neighborhood park where Serafina had played as a child. Dinner at Athenais, perhaps the symphony afterward, something elegant. But this, he continued, gesturing to the simple park around them, this feels right, where your dreams began. Before she could respond, he lowered himself to one knee before her, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. I've rehearsed this 100 times, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Words are usually my ally, but they seem inadequate now. Serafina Nayel, you entered my life 5 years ago, and from that first moment, you became my center. For too long, I loved you silently. Now that I've found my voice, I never want to stop telling you how completely you are loved." He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a flawless diamond surrounded by smaller stones set in platinum. "Will you marry me, Serafina?" "Yes," she whispered, the word carrying all the certainty in her soul. "Yes, Lucian." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. When he rose to kiss her, she felt the dampness of tears on his cheeks, or perhaps they were her own. In the weeks that followed, they moved forward with wedding plans, deciding on a ceremony that would honor both their backgrounds while looking toward their future. Zora threw herself enthusiastically into artistic elements, while Serafina's mother approached the practical aspects with quiet efficiency. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect at Lucian's farmhouse, transformed for the occasion with elegant simplicity. Only 60 guests had been invited, close colleagues, Serafina's family, and a few carefully chosen business associates whose relationships had evolved into genuine friendship. In a bedroom overlooking the gardens, Serafina prepared with her mother and sister, the ivory gown she had chosen hanging nearby, a modern silhouette with subtle architectural elements. "The gardens look magnificent," her mother assured her. "That rose arbor where you'll exchange vows. It's like something from a dream." Downstairs in the garden where his grandmother had once planted roses, Lucian waited beneath an arbor of white blooms. When music began and guests rose, turning toward the garden path, Lucian felt time itself suspend. And then she was there, a vision in ivory, moving toward him on her mother's arm with serene grace. When she reached him, taking his offered hand, he had to swallow hard against the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Hi," she whispered, just for him. "Hi," he whispered back, squeezing her hand gently. When the time came for vows, Lucian spoke first, his deep voice carrying clearly. "Serafina," he began, "for years I loved you in silence. Words, which had always been my allies in business, failed me completely when it came to expressing what you mean to me." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her hands as he continued. "I vow to love you completely, in words and actions, every day of our lives. I vow to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams as fiercely as my own. I vow to remember always that true strength lies not in power or success, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to love without reservation, to let you see all that I am." When it was her turn, Serafina took a steadying breath. "Lucian," she began, her voice wavering slightly before she steadied it. "I stand here today to join my life with yours." She paused, taking a breath. "I never thought I'd—" She stopped, collecting herself as emotion threatened to overwhelm her. Meeting his eyes again, she continued more naturally. "I love both sides of you, the man who protected me silently for years, and the one who finally found his voice. I promise to be your partner, your confidant." She smiled, adding, "And yes, sometimes your challenger, because we both know I'll never stop pushing you when it matters." "I promise to help you remember where you came from," she continued. "That boy from Riverdale with big dreams. And I promise to build with you. Not just buildings, but everything that matters." As the ceremony concluded and they were pronounced husband and wife, their first kiss as a married couple was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. As evening fell and fairy lights illuminated the garden, Lucian drew his bride away from the festivities for a quiet moment alone in a secluded corner of the garden, where a path of rose petals led to a small, hidden gazebo he'd built specially for this night. "When did you do this?" she asked, turning to him in amazement. "I've been working on it for weeks," he admitted, drawing her into the intimate space, a sanctuary just for us. Above them, stars painted the sky like diamonds scattered across velvet. Gentle music drifted from hidden speakers, the same melody that had played during their first dance at the company gala years ago. "You remembered," she whispered, recognizing the tune instantly. "I remember everything about us," Lucian said, his voice thick with emotion. He took her hands in his, thumbs caressing the wedding band that now adorned her finger. "For 5 years, I watched you from a distance. Now you're my wife, and I still can't believe you're mine." "I love both versions of you," she whispered. "The powerful CEO everyone respects, and the gentle man only I get to see." As midnight approached, Lucian lifted her into his arms, carrying her across the rose-strewn path toward the farmhouse. "I love you beyond words, beyond reason," he vowed as he carried her over the threshold. "Today is just our beginning." Chapter 12. Love's Legacy. Santorini's whitewashed buildings gleamed against the azure Mediterranean, the setting sun painting the sky in breathtaking hues of gold and crimson. Serafina stood on their private villa terrace, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt and bougainvillea as she gazed out at the caldera below. 2 weeks of honeymoon bliss had created a cocoon around them, days exploring ancient ruins and hidden coves, evenings savoring local cuisine in candlelit tavernas, and nights of passion so consuming it still left her breathless to recall them. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Lucian's deep voice preceded his arms encircling her from behind, his solid warmth enveloping her as he nuzzled the sensitive spot behind her ear. She agreed, leaning into his embrace. "I understand why you chose this place now." "I wanted to show you perfection," he murmured, his lips tracing a path along her neck that sent shivers down her spine. "Though now that I have you here, the view pales in comparison." Serafina turned in his arms, her heart still fluttering at the raw devotion in his eyes. After weeks of marriage, the intensity of his gaze hadn't diminished. If anything, it had deepened, as if each day together revealed new facets of their connection. "I have something for you," she said, taking his hand and leading him to the cushioned lounger where they had spent countless hours talking, reading, making love under the Mediterranean stars. Lucian raised an eyebrow in curiosity as she reached for a small gift box she'd hidden earlier, wrapped in simple silver paper with a blue ribbon. "What's this?" he asked, accepting it with an intrigued smile. "Open it," she encouraged, a mixture of nervousness and excitement fluttering in her stomach. He unwrapped the package with characteristic precision, lifting the lid to reveal what appeared to be a polished piece of driftwood carved into the shape of a wave, small enough to fit in his palm. Confusion flickered across his features until he turned it over, revealing words etched into the base. "We're having a baby." Lucian froze, his eyes widening as he processed the message. Slowly, he raised his gaze to meet hers, wonder and disbelief warring in his expression. "Serafina," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you?" She nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. "Yes, 8 weeks along." Her hand drifted to her still flat abdomen. Our love made something miraculous. The polished control that had defined Lucian Vale throughout his business career shattered completely. Tears filled his eyes, spilling unashamed down his cheeks as he set the gift aside with trembling hands. "A child," he breathed, reaching out to place his palm gently over her stomach. "Our child." The awe in his voice made Serafina's heart swell. She covered his hand with her own. "I took the test 3 days ago. I wanted to be sure before I told you." In one fluid motion, Lucian pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying every emotion words couldn't capture. Joy, gratitude, wonder, and a love so profound it transcended language. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, his breath uneven. "You have given me everything," he said, voice breaking with emotion. "A love I never—" He stopped, swallowing hard, his usual eloquence deserting him. "God, Serafina, a baby." His hand caressed her stomach again. "Our baby." Serafina covered his hand with hers, seeing the mix of joy and vulnerability in his eyes. "Are you happy?" His laugh was breathless, incredulous. "Happy? He shook his head, searching for words. "I don't even know what to call this feeling. I'm terrified and excited and—" He pressed his forehead to hers. Complete somehow. As twilight deepened around them, they remained entwined on the lounger, talking of the future that now held this precious new dimension. Lucian's hand rarely left her abdomen, as if needing the physical connection to this miracle they had created together. "I never had a father worthy of the name," he confessed, vulnerability raw in his voice. "I don't know how to be one." Serafina threaded her fingers through his. "You know exactly how to love, Lucian. I've seen it in everything you do. And that's what matters most." Later, as moonlight silvered the sea below their terrace, their celebration became physical, a slow, reverent lovemaking that honored the new life growing within her. Lucian's usual passionate intensity transformed into something almost worshipful, his hands and lips mapping her body as if memorizing every curve anew. "I love you," he whispered against her skin, the words a sacred vow. "Both of you." 1 year later, the Henderson Community Center bustled with activity, its grand opening ceremony drawing residents from throughout the revitalized neighborhood. Serafina moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations on both the successful project and the beautiful 6-month-old daughter, cradled in Lucian's arms. "She's got your eyes," an elderly resident observed, smiling at the dark-eyed infant who watched the world with curious intensity from the safety of her father's embrace. "And her mother's spirit," Lucian replied proudly, pressing a gentle kiss to his daughter's curls. Serafina's heart swelled at the sight. Powerful, commanding Lucian Vale completely besotted with their tiny daughter, Ileana Grace. The transformation in him over the past year had been remarkable to witness. The reserved, controlled CEO still commanded respect in boardrooms, but at home, he melted completely for his family. The formal ribbon-cutting complete, they slipped away from the celebration to a quiet corner of the garden that had been designed as part of the community space. "Remember when this was all just plans on paper?" Serafina mused, looking around at what had once been a neglected neighborhood, now thriving with new energy. "You saw it before anyone else did," Lucian reminded her, adjusting Eliana in his arms as she began to doze. "The vision was always yours." "But you made it possible," she countered, watching as their daughter's tiny hand curled around her father's finger, even in sleep. "Just like you made this possible." His eyes softened as he gazed at their child. "She's the most extraordinary thing I've ever helped create, and the most terrifying." Serafina laughed softly. The great Lucian Vale, terrified by 7 pounds of baby. "Completely," he admitted without shame. "The responsibility of it." He shook his head in wonder. "To be worthy of her, to give her the childhood I never had, it's the most important project of my life." "And you're exceeding all expectations," Serafina assured him, leaning up to press a kiss to his lips. "Even the pediatrician says she's never seen a more devoted father." Pride suffused his features at her words. "I want to build something that matters. For her, for you, for us." Later that evening, as they settled into the family wing they had created at the farmhouse, their primary residence since Eliana's birth, Serafina watched Lucian gently place their sleeping daughter in her crib. His large hand lingered on her tiny back, his expression one of absolute wonder. "Sometimes I still can't believe she's real," he confessed softly as they stood together watching her sleep. "That any of this is real." Serafina leaned against his side, his arm automatically curling around her shoulders. "Believe it," she whispered. "This is our reality now." In their bedroom, with Eliana's monitor softly humming nearby, they came together with the passion that had never dimmed between them. Parenthood had added new dimensions to their relationship, deeper tenderness, shared wonder, occasional exhaustion, but the fundamental connection remained unchanged, perhaps even strengthened by the love they both poured into their child. "I've been thinking," Lucian said later, as they lay entwined in the peaceful aftermath, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, earning a playful squeeze. "About the Valerian Foundation," he continued. "I want to expand its focus." Serafina propped herself up to look at him, intrigued. The philanthropic arm of their corporation had always been important to Lucian, though typically focused on architectural preservation and urban development. "The arts program that saved Zora," he explained. "Programs like that for children who need creative outlets, safe spaces to discover their talents. I want to establish them in every community we develop." The thoughtfulness of this vision touched her deeply. "That would be wonderful." "And something else," he added, suddenly looking almost shy, an expression so rare on his confident face that it immediately captured her attention. "A program specifically for shy children, those who struggle to find their voice." Understanding dawned. "Like you once did." He nodded. "If I had found my voice sooner." He pressed a gentle kiss to her lips. "Well, we might have had more time together." "We have all the time we need," she assured him. "But I love the idea, helping children express themselves, find confidence. I thought we might call it Finding Your Voice," he suggested, "and perhaps you could be involved in shaping it. Your communication skills far exceed mine in many ways." The request, so thoughtful, so perfectly aligned with values they shared, exemplified how completely their professional and personal lives had integrated. No longer was Lucian compartmentalizing different aspects of himself. Every part of his life reflected his whole heart. "I'd be honored," she told him sincerely. Satisfaction settled over his features as he pulled her close again. "I keep thinking about legacy," he admitted. "What we leave behind. For decades, I thought legacy meant buildings with the Valerian name, developments that would stand for generations." "And now?" she prompted gently. His eyes drifted toward the baby monitor, where Eliana's peaceful breathing created a gentle rhythm. "Now I know true legacy lies in the lives we touch, the communities we help build, the opportunities we create." His gaze returned to Serafina. "The love we share that creates ripples far beyond ourselves." The Santorini sunset painted the world in gold and crimson, just as it had 1 year earlier when Serafina had shared news of their impending child. They had returned to celebrate their anniversary, leaving Eliana in the doting care of her grandmother and aunt for 3 precious days of reconnection. They stood on the same terrace, but now Lucian held something in his hands. A small leather-bound book. "What's this?" Serafina asked, curiosity piqued. "Something I've been working on," he admitted, a rare uncertainty in his expression. "I'm not a poet or a writer, but—" He extended the book toward her. "These are my words. For you." Serafina accepted it with gentle hands, opening to the first page where Lucian's precise handwriting filled the cream-colored paper. "To Serafina, who taught me that the most powerful words are those spoken from the heart." Turning the pages, she discovered a journal of sorts, his thoughts, memories, and feelings chronicling their journey together. The night of her broken car, the dance at the gala, the storm that had trapped them in the cafe, each memory captured in words that revealed how deeply he had observed and treasured every moment between them. Tears filled her eyes as she reached entries about their wedding, the birth of their daughter, quiet everyday moments he had found profound. Today, Eliana smiled for the first time, and Serafina cried with joy. "I understood then that all the buildings I have created pale beside this family we are building together." The final entry was dated that morning. 1 year of marriage has taught me that love is not a fixed state, but a living thing that grows deeper with each passing day. What began in silence has blossomed into a life where words of love flow freely. Now I cannot imagine a day without telling her how completely she is loved, how utterly she is cherished, how perfectly she completes me. She showed me that real strength lies in vulnerability. She gave purpose to my success. She gave me a daughter who embodies the best of both of us. And in doing so, she gave me something I never thought possible, a life rich beyond measure, not in wealth or power, but in love. When Serafina looked up, tears streaming unashamedly down her cheeks, she found Lucian watching her with such tender vulnerability that her heart seemed to expand in her chest. "No one has ever seen this side of you," she whispered, clutching the precious book. "No one else ever will," he replied simply. "It exists only for you." She moved into his embrace, the journal pressed between them like a physical manifestation of their connection. "I love you," she said, the words simultaneously ordinary and profound. "So completely." As the sun sank lower on the horizon, bathing them in golden light, Lucian lifted her chin for a kiss that spoke of passion undiminished by time, of commitment only deepened by challenges overcome, of a love that had transcended silence to find its perfect expression. "We have built something beautiful," he murmured against her lips, "more lasting than any structure, more valuable than any fortune." "Love beyond words," she whispered back, echoing the title he had given his journal. "Though I'll never stop trying to find them," he promised, gathering her closer as twilight descended around them. "For you, for Eliana, for the family we're creating together." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky above Santorini, Lucian and Serafina stood wrapped in each other's arms, their hearts beating in perfect synchronicity. The journey that had begun with silent longing had transformed into a symphony of shared dreams, passionate connection, and abiding love. For a man who had once feared vulnerability, and a woman who had once prioritized independence above all else, they had discovered the most profound truth, that in surrender to love they had found not weakness, but strength, not limitation, but boundless possibility. And as the moon rose over the Mediterranean, casting silver light across the sleeping island, they renewed their commitment in the most ancient and sacred way, through the passionate physical expression of a love that had finally, beautifully, eternally found its voice.